I opened my banking app at 6:00 a.m. to pay my IVF clinic deposit. The balance stared back at me. $0. Zero, zero. $68,000, my entire life savings gone. Transferred by my father. I didn't get a frantic apology. I got a text. Grace is in a bind. Family money is for real emergencies. Not your imaginary children. We'll talk later. He didn't just drain my account while I slept. He looked at my future and decided my sister's reputation was worth more than my unborn child. Before I tell you exactly what emergency required my father to steal my unborn children's future, drop a comment below. Where are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? I want to know who is standing with me today. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I simply walked to my kitchen island, turned on the espresso machine, and watched the dark liquid drip into the cup. It was fitting weather for an audit. See, this theft wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the final line item in a ledger I had been keeping in my head for 28 years. In my family, I wasn't a daughter. I was the structural support beam that everyone leaned on. But nobody bothered to paint. There is a term for children like me. Psychologists call it the glass child. We are the healthy ones. The competent ones. The ones who don't have crises. Don't get arrested. And don't need bail money. Because our siblings consume 100% of our parents' emotional bandwidth. We become transparent. Our parents look right through us to see the problem child. My sister Grace was the problem. She was the vibrant, chaotic golden child who needed constant investment. And my father, David, was the CEO of our dysfunction. I thought back to 3 years ago. Grace decided she was going to be a lifestyle influencer. She needed a camera, professional lighting, a new wardrobe. David told me it was an investment in the family brand. I paid $4,000. The channel lasted 3 weeks. I never saw a dime back. But this time was different. This wasn't spare cash. $68,000. That number wasn't arbitrary. It was the result of 5 years of brutal, disciplined silence. I worked a high-pressure data analyst job by day and consulted by night. I skipped vacations. I drove a 10-year-old car. I ate leftovers while Grace posted photos of oyster platters on Instagram. I did this because at 23, a doctor sat me down and told me that my fertility was a ticking clock. A medical condition meant that if I wanted children, I needed to freeze my eggs before I turned 30. It was an expensive, invasive, non-negotiable insurance policy for a future I desperately wanted. That money wasn't a savings account. It was my unborn children. It was my autonomy. It was the one thing in my life that didn't belong to the family organism. And David knew it. He knew exactly what that fund was for. He had sat in the waiting room with me during the first consultation. He had nodded solemnly when the doctor explained the costs. But looking at that zero balance, I realized the truth. To a narcissist, your needs are hypothetical, but their crises are real. My biological clock was an abstraction. Grace's immediate need for cash was a tangible emergency. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. The warmth didn't reach my chest, which remained cold and hollow. I wasn't going to cry about the money. Crying is for people who still have hope that the other person cares. I knew better now. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a harvest. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim morning light. It was time to stop being glass. It was time to become something much harder. Something that could cut. At 9:15, my phone rang. The screen lit up with a single word, Dad. I didn't answer immediately. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. On the 4th attempt, I picked up. I didn't say hello. I just pressed the phone to my ear and waited. Anna, stop playing games. David's voice wasn't guilty. It was annoyed. It was the tone of a CEO speaking to an incompetent middle manager who had misplaced a file. I assume you saw the transfer notification. We need to clear this up before you do something dramatic. He wasn't calling to apologize for stealing $68,000. He was calling to manage the PR. You emptied the account. David, I said. My voice sounded strange to me. Flat. Metallic. Like a recording of myself. I reallocated stagnant resources. He corrected. Sharp and immediate. We are in the middle of a liquidity crisis. Grace's business investment went south. The creditors are not waiting. It wasn't a business investment, I said. I saw the vendor names on the statement before the balance hit zero. The Ritz-Carlton. Dom Perignon. A private jet charter service. She spent $68,000 on a birthday party. It was a brand activation event, he shouted. The facade slipping. She is an influencer. Anna. Perception is reality in her industry. She needed to manifest wealth to attract high-tier sponsors. It was a strategic move. She used a corporate credit card. I said. She doesn't own the company. David. She's a junior marketing assistant. That's not strategy. That's embezzlement. There was a pause on the other end. Heavy and breathing. Then he sighed. The sound of a man burdened by the stupidity of others. It was an administrative error. He said. Grace has been under immense pressure. She grabbed the wrong card. It's a simple mix-up. But the company is blowing it out of proportion. They're threatening to go to the district attorney if we don't restore the funds by noon. Do you want your sister in a cell over a clerical mistake? I listened to him. And suddenly, the absurdity of it crystallized. Psychologists call this weaponized incompetence. Grace commits a felony. And David reframes it as a mix-up because she's too special to be burdened with details like whose money she is spending. She swipes a card. Throws a party to manifest abundance. And when the bill comes, I am the one who pays. So you took my money, I said. You took the money for my surgery. You weren't using it, he exploded. That money has been sitting in a low-yield savings account for 5 years. Doing absolutely nothing. It's dead capital. Anna. Grace had an immediate life-or-death need. You are hoarding resources for a hypothetical future, while your sister is facing real-world ruin right now. This was the vampire's logic. To a narcissist, your savings are an insult to them. If you have money, and they have a need, your refusal to give it to them is viewed as active aggression. In his mind, my money wasn't safety. It was wasted potential that could be better spent servicing the family image. He truly believed that paying off Grace's party fraud was a better investment than my potential child. You're being incredibly selfish, he continued, his voice dropping to a disappointed growl. You're single. You're stable. You can earn it back. Grace doesn't have that luxury. I did what I had to do, as the head of this family. Now, I need you to sign the authorization form so the bank doesn't flag the transfer. I sent it to your email. I looked at the email notification popping up on my laptop screen. Subject: urgent signature required. He didn't just want my money. He wanted my complicity. He wanted me to sign off on my own erasure, so he could feel like a hero for saving Grace. I'm not signing anything. David, I said. Then you are sending your sister to prison. He sneered. And don't think I won't tell everyone that you let it happen. You'll be the villain of this family forever. I think I can live with that, I whispered. I didn't slam the phone down. That would have been satisfying. But it also would have been communication. It would have told David that he had gotten under my skin. That he still held the remote control to my emotions. Instead, I used a technique psychologists call the gray rock method. When dealing with a narcissist who feeds on drama, the only way to starve them is to become as uninteresting and impenetrable as a stone. You don't argue. You don't explain. You don't defend. You simply disengage. I waited for him to take a breath, preparing for another round of insults. And then I gently tapped the end call button. The silence that filled the apartment wasn't empty. It was heavy with purpose. I didn't give him the dignity of a goodbye. I immediately dialed the number on the back of my debit card. My hands were steady now, moving with the precision of a surgeon. Fraud department. Please, I said, when the automated voice asked for a prompt. When a human representative came on the line, I didn't cry. I didn't tell her the sob story about my sister's birthday party or my father's betrayal. I spoke in the language of compliance and regulation. I am reporting unauthorized activity on my account, I stated. A transfer of $68,000 was executed without my consent. The joint custodian utilized an outdated authorization to commit theft. I am revoking all third-party access immediately. We can put a stop on the account. Ma'am, the agent said, her voice professional but guarded. But if it's a joint custodian, I am also flagging my social security number for identity theft. I interrupted. I want a freeze on every account linked to my profile. Checking. Savings. And the joint money market account ending in 452. That was the nuclear option. The money market account wasn't mine, not really. It was the account David used to receive his pension and pay the mortgage on the lake house. He had added me to it years ago for estate planning purposes, claiming it would make things easier when he died. Now, it was the chokehold I needed. By freezing my profile, I was locking him out of his own liquidity. Are you sure? The agent asked. This will decline all auto payments and freeze assets for up to 30 days while we investigate. I am sure, I said. Freeze it all. Click. Done. The digital siege had begun. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't David. It was Grace. Anna. Seriously, Dad says you locked the accounts. You are literally blocking my abundance flow right now. I need to pay the venue deposit or they're going to sue. Stop being so toxic and fix this. Blocking her abundance flow. She was facing felony embezzlement charges. And she was worried about her vibrational energy. It was so delusional it was almost impressive. I didn't reply. I didn't block her. Either. I wanted the receipts. I screenshotted the text and added it to a folder on my laptop named Evidence. I grabbed my coat and keys. I couldn't stay in this apartment. The air felt recycled, tainted by the invisible presence of my family. I needed to go to the one place David never visited. To see the one person he had successfully erased from our lives years ago. I needed to see Aunt Amanda. I drove north, leaving the sleek, the vertical glass of Chicago behind, for the sprawling, wooded quiet of Door County. It was a 3-hour drive, but it felt like traveling back in time. The further I got from the city, the lighter the air felt. Aunt Amanda lived in a modest A-frame cabin tucked behind a wall of pines. In my family, Amanda was the cautionary tale. David always referred to her as bitter or difficult. He told us she had been cut off from the family trust because she was greedy and had tried to sue our grandmother. I hadn't spoken to her in 7 years, but as I pulled into her gravel driveway, I realized that difficult was just David's code word for cannot be manipulated. She was waiting on the porch, a mug of tea in her hands, watching my car with sharp, intelligent eyes. She didn't look surprised. She looked like she had been expecting me. I stepped out of the car. I didn't offer a hug. I didn't make small talk. He emptied the accounts. I said. Amanda took a slow sip of her tea. 68,000, she guessed. How did you know? Because that's the limit, she said, turning to the door. Any more than that triggers a federal structuring review. Come inside. Anna, I've been keeping a file for you since you were 12. Her living room was small, cluttered with books and smelling of cedar and old paper. It wasn't the sterile, white-on-white showroom my father lived in. It felt lived in. It felt safe. She went to a heavy filing cabinet in the corner, unlocked it with a key she wore on a chain around her neck, and pulled out a thick, yellowed envelope. David isn't a financial genius. Anna, she said, sitting across from me. He's a cannibal. He eats the people closest to him to keep his ego fed. He did it to me 20 years ago. He stole our mother's jewelry to fund his medical practice. When I threatened to call the police, he convinced everyone I was crazy. He cut me off to protect his narrative. She slid the envelope across the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. But he made a mistake, she continued. He forgot that our mother, your grandmother, saw him clearly. David thinks he owns the lake house. He thinks it's his crown jewel. His retirement plan. His leverage. He talks about selling it to developers every Thanksgiving. Right. I nodded. The lake house. $850,000 of prime lakefront real estate. It was the only real asset David had left. Read paragraph 4, Amanda said. I opened the deed. It was an old document, typed on a typewriter, the ink fading. My eyes scanned the dense legal jargon until I hit the section she had highlighted in pink. The moral turpitude provision. This house isn't David's, Amanda said softly. It belongs to the Sterling Family Trust. And your grandmother added a trap door. I read the clause out loud, my voice shaking. In the event that the primary beneficiary is found to have utilized trust assets or family funds to aid, abet, conceal, or facilitate a felony committed by any beneficiary, their interest in this property shall be immediately forfeited. Ownership shall transfer in full to the next responsible lineal descendant. I looked up at her. The room seemed to spin. Grace committed a felony, I whispered. Credit card fraud. Embezzlement. It's over the federal limit. And David? Amanda said, a cold smile touching her lips. Just used your money to cover it up. That makes him an accessory after the fact. He didn't just steal from you, Anna. He used family funds to conceal a crime. He doesn't know this clause exists, I said. He never reads the fine print, Amanda replied. He assumes ownership is absolute because he's a man, and he's the patriarch. He thinks he's the king. But this piece of paper says he's just a tenant on good behavior. She reached out and tapped the document. He thinks you are weak. He thinks you will absorb the loss to keep the peace. Prove him wrong. I slid the deed back into the envelope. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like an auditor who had just found the smoking gun in the ledger. Do you know a good lawyer? I asked. Amanda handed me a business card. This is the one. He hates David almost as much as I do. I didn't return to Chicago to negotiate. I went back to foreclose. Marcus, the lawyer, confirmed the clause was ironclad. My grandmother had built a trap into the estate, and my father had triggered it. But Marcus uncovered the real reason David stole $68,000 overnight. Grace had been caught using a corporate card for embezzlement. She had 24 hours to repay the money, or face charges. Panicked. David drained my IVF fund to cover her felony. He hadn't just stolen from me. He had obstructed justice. Marcus proposed the final move. We filed a report for elder financial abuse, forcing police to investigate the transfer. When confronted, David's ego betrayed him. He proudly admitted he authorized the payment to save Grace, confessing, on record, to using family funds to conceal a felony. That confession triggered immediate forfeiture of the lake house. As police escorted Grace out for questioning, David turned on her, desperate to save himself. It didn't matter. The evidence was complete. The house was transferred to me within weeks. I sold it for $850,000, repaid my stolen future fund, and placed the rest beyond their reach. Grace now awaits trial. David lives in state-subsidized care. I didn't destroy my family. I balanced the books and walked away finally solvent. Finally free.